Like one of the first days of camp, I'm walking out and I'm trying to get Joe's attention, but I go, Frank, keeps walking. Frank, he goes, my name is Joe. And that was my first real interaction with I'm 23 years old, just froze me in my in place.
I was on punt team. That's what it was. So, you were my coach on that. And I didn't have, I stayed with the offense. I didn't ever go work with the defense. So I didn't know much about you other than just our little punt team. And I was like, man, this guy's really intense. But when I talked to all the defensive players, they loved you. We have Rashaan Jordan, newest head football coach here at Wingate University. Congratulations, Coach.
Appreciate
We're super happy for you. I think I commented a couple times on the Wingate stuff, and it's like there's no better person to follow. Obviously, my favorite head coach.
Exactly.
But,
my favorite one as well. So
I don't think there's a better person we could have found for the job. So really happy for you.
Yeah, it's it's been one of those things in life where not in a million years did I really even think about becoming the head football coach at Wingate University. Joe and I have been working with each other, at least we've known each other for 30 years. And, just this footwork, the steps that it took me to even get to this place, a lot of it was guided and a lot of it's been him in those moments when I needed somebody. And, I got started way back in 1995, and this is one of my favorite Joe Reich stories to tell. So I'm kind of sitting on my couch in Buffalo, New York. Got done graduating from college, really aimless, no idea what I'm doing. So my high school football coach, who ended up becoming my offensive coordinator in college, goes to UB, calls me up and says, "Hey, I got this job. You want to get in and work here at UB, running the scout team?" I'm like, hey, man, I'm making lottery tickets at Buffalo right now, doing nothing. So I go down there, interview, get the job, and I see Joe for the first time. And so I grew up in Buffalo, New York, so I'm a Frank Reich guy.
Yeah, you know the Reich name.
Right. I know the right name. I know the right face. And so I see him, and he looks just like his brother to me at the time. So, I was like, wow, man, I go back and tell my family this. So then, one of the first days of camp, I'm walking out, and I'm trying to get Joe's attention, but I go, Frank. He just keeps walking.
He ignores you.
Frank keeps walking. Frank. He goes, my name is Joe. And that was my first real interaction with I'm 23 years old, just froze me in place. And to go from that moment to having him, make me the successor for the program that he's cultivated and grown for so many years is just quite a special moment. And
yeah.
I told my wife a long time ago, I said, if I ever become a head coach, I never want to follow up a legend.
Good job.
Yeah, I screwed that all up, messed that all up. So, just sit here and say that I get to do, when I talked to the team and I got my first meeting, I told them, this is a new beginning, but it is a continuation.
Yeah.
This is Wingate Football. It is the culture that Coach Reich has fostered for decades now. Mm-hmm. And, I grew up in that culture. I believe in that culture. I raised my kids on trust, respect, and commitment to excellence. Mm-hmm. So, from that standpoint, there's not a lot of changes that are going to come from that standpoint. Right. So.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about, you as a football coach, I only have a couple memories because you were there my sophomore year.
Yep.
And then you left.
Yep.
And so I didn't have you when I actually played.
Right.
So I was your scout team. I was your special teams guy.
Yeah.
I wasn't scout team. I was special teams.
Yep.
But the only things I remember is we had summer conditioning from the summer right when we got here for camp. And you were the coach that was standing in front of me for our conditioning test. And I was so nervous to, one, not touch the line or not pass. I mean, I don't think I was actually in shape, but I made it for the conditioning test. I was like, I don't want to get out in front of this guy.
Yeah.
It was that. And then, you were you punt team? I was on punt team. That's what it was. So, you were my coach on that.
Yep.
And I didn't have, I stayed with the offense. I didn't ever go work with the defense. So I didn't know much about you other than just our little punt team.
Yep.
And I was like, man, this guy's really intense. But when I talked to all the defensive players, they loved you. I mean, I'm like, that guy's always over there yelling and screaming his head off. And they're like, no, he's the best defensive coach we've ever had.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if you guys love him, then I'm in.
I think, the thing for it is that, for everybody that's played here, I want to bring it for them. One of the things I said to every player hopefully has heard this message from me is that I played the game and I got everything out of it that I needed. I got awards and trophies and pictures and all that stuff. That time's gone for me. Now, when the Lord gave me this opportunity to do this job, as I want to pour as much as I can into everybody that I can touch and make sure that they can get everything out of it. And life is such that you don't always bring your best effort on your own. I've told people sometimes it's easier to quit on yourself than it is on other people, because you can make excuses to yourself on why you're not doing the best you can. Right. And so I always saw it as my responsibility to drag it out of you if it had to be, and build in a mental, emotional, and physical toughness that it was going to take for you to thrive on the field, so that you, by the time it was all said and done, got everything you possibly could out of your career.
Yeah.
And I think that was the thing that I wanted to impart to every kid that I had on defense. And they knew that where it was coming from when I was in their face and I was grinding them out, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about that I'm trying to get to another job. It wasn't about, me trying to be the greatest defensive coach and be on the side. It was about you, and I intensely focused on you in terms of what you needed.
And that's what they related to me.
Yeah.
They it wasn't that you were trying to degrade them or downplay their character. You were truly trying to make them the best human being, not just football player, as you possibly could.
And I think the thing is, one of the other things that I think they recognize is it was anybody. It wasn't like I picked on, the lowest guy on the roster talent-wise, or there was one individual position, or it was a certain type of personality. It was everybody. If you did, it didn't matter. No, it didn't matter. I mean, if you were our leading tackler and you came out and you gave a crappy effort on a particular play, you knew it. And if you were a scout team guy, you got the same thrashing, in terms of this is not good enough, you need to go harder, that a full scholarship kid and you were a preferred walk-on. And so I think, initially when the freshmen come in, they're like, wow, this is way over the top. And then all of a sudden you're looking at this All-American guy getting his butt chewed because he didn't come out to practice that day with the right attitude. You're like, this guy's indiscriminate, and it's always just about And it's always directed about the actions. It wasn't about, if I was trying to get under your skin, it was to try to shock you into understanding, like, your actions and what you were doing at that moment were not great to help you win or to help us win.
Right.
And, I've kept that, in terms of, like, you got to deliver the message a little differently at times for each kid, but it's still the same thing. Are you here to practice? Are you here to win? If you're not doing that, then why'd you come here in the first place?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, a lot of people, and I don't know the backstory either. What's your tell me where this all started. You played football.
Sure.
You played in college.
Yep.
Where'd you play in college?
Alfred University, small school, about 2.5 hours from anywhere. That was kind of the interesting part about it. So my story goes back kind of interesting because the succession plan for every moment that I have really starts from my decision to go to Turner Carroll High School, which is no longer in existence. But I decided to go there, and a man by the name of Dennis Green ends up becoming my head football coach my sophomore year. I was just a little piddly kid on a freshman playing a little safety on the JV team, and he decides to take me and make me the starting quarterback running the triple option and the wishbone.
Okay.
And so we have pretty good success. Our team is, TC Pride, is we got a bunch of guys down in Charlotte here that were on that team. And the funny part about it is we never played a home game. We did not have a home field. So every game in high school, we played on the road. So we became the little road warriors. And we had a really good team and won a lot of football games. Well, we get to my senior year. I don't really have a lot of direction on what I want to do. I just know I want to play. Well, Dennis ends up sending me down to Alfred University for a visit. They want me to play tailback down there. I go down there in the cover of darkness. I leave in the cover of darkness. I never really saw school, but I decide that's the place where I'm going to go. And I go there, and again in my sophomore year, Dennis becomes my offensive coordinator.
Okay.
So that I go on and have, All-American career and all of that stuff. So
I knew you were pretty good. That's all I remember. You're pretty good.
Yeah, I had, I played it behind a couple of good backs too myself. But my senior year, I had a really excellent year. And like I said earlier, I kind of get out of it. I thought I was, going to go into athletic administration. That was my thing. But,
as we all do.
Yeah, and didn't really have a plan whatsoever. I mean, zero plan. So I get out of college and I go back home to Buffalo, and I'm just kind of working odd and ends jobs and doing some bouncing. I'm working at Canisius College serving other kids cafeteria food. I'm making lottery tickets, and then I'm working as a youth.
Just hustling.
Yeah, just youth navigator kind of thing. And so that's when Dennis again calls me up and says, here's this job at the University of Buffalo. And so not thinking about becoming a football coach has never crossed my mind. Didn't even know how to become a football coach. And so I take the job and didn't even ask how much money it was. And it was $4,000 for the whole year.
Well, that sounds about right, too.
Yeah, no housing, no meals, just $4,000. So for whatever reason, I agree to it. And I stay in the job. I live in the stadium for 2 years. And my first meeting for camp, we're upstairs. I'm with the defensive backs at the time. So this is I've made the jump from offense to defense now. And I fall asleep in the first meeting. I'm like gone, because at this point, like, we're working hard. It's 6 a.m, and I'm back in the back of the room, and I just close my eyes and then all of a sudden I hear the DB room just cracking up and laughing at me. And Bobby Earhart, who I still talk to this day, was the full-time DB coach back then. And, he gave me a hard time about it, made it fun. They had some fun with me. And, but for whatever reason, I stuck it out. I mean, despite having $4,000 and no car and living in a stadium for 2 years, it took to me. Yeah. It just took to me. And it was interesting because I had no clue about defense. I played running back in a split back veer offense in the 90s. I mean,
so you really didn't know offense either.
No,
unless they were running split back.
No, we were running split back veer, and back then it wasn't like the game it is today where it was split back veer. It was read this window, hit this gap, and then by my time I was a senior, we were running I. So I was running toss sweep and ISO and that type of things. But it wasn't really like it is today, where the game's on a higher educational level. And so when I get to defense, I'm like, hook to who, cover what. Yeah. And I'm like, my real job is just to hold the scout team cards and get them in and out of the huddle. Right. And so, I'm out there and I'm, really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm holding up the cards. And Ed O'Neill, who was the defensive coordinator at that time, is getting frustrated because the scout team's not getting in and out of the huddle. And it's I don't remember how bad it was getting, but it was getting pretty bad.
It was bad enough.
It was bad enough that Ed O'Neill sent Joe Reich to go over there and get me right. So Joe's on his way.
The thing is, I can't imagine someone sending over Coach Reich because he's like the nicest guy in the world.
Well, at that time it was, I don't know.
He was a little younger at that time.
Yeah, he was younger, and I don't know what Joe was going to say to me, but he gets there and I'm in the middle of it, and I can hear Ed yelling, and then I finally break it. I break. You and you that blah blah, and I'm gonna kick you and you over here, and blah blah, and I'll punch you, and if you don't get out of the huddle, and so Joe hears me just ripping tail. Never says anything to me, walks back, and he's told me this later, goes, he's got it.
He's good.
He's good. And from there on out, I didn't have any more problems.
I've heard some stories about people falling asleep in your meeting, so I'm wondering if that's because of your first ever meeting you're passed out in.
Yeah, well,
you're kind of notorious for what you do with sleepers.
Well, fortunately, we don't have many sleepers anymore.
Well, I wonder why.
Yeah, well, early on, I think, I remember the early years here. We had the team was just in kind of disarray. I mean, you make changes at the coaching staff when, either somebody decides to leave voluntarily or things are just not going well. And, we had a lot of tremendous football players. I mean, we were able to turn it around pretty quickly because we were very talented, but we just weren't connected, and we had obviously you elect captains, and every team has a captain. But at that time there was factions, and so I turned it into there's no more factions. I'm the faction. I am the captain. All right. And so it started from, just getting the attitude of like, how do you come to a meeting? How do you focus on a meeting? you close your eyes in my meeting, we're going to have a problem, and so that kind of started that, awakening process on like, what do you do in a meeting?
Well, and it's a big shocker to high school kids because they don't meet. They don't watch film. They don't break down stuff. It's like, hey, you're a pretty good player.
Yep.
And there you go. And that's it.
Oh, yeah. And the game has gotten so much better at all levels. The high school coaches do a tremendous job. But the amount of time that, and it changes from level to level, right? The high school is a big jump from middle school. College is a big jump from high school. And then obviously if you're lucky enough to go from college to the NFL, it's a huge jump because of the amount of time that you're allowed each level.
Right.
So for these guys, when they come in and they get to the college level, we have a lot more time with them. And so the meetings can get very long. There can be an hour and a half to 2 hour first install meeting where you come in as a high school guy and you're like, oh my God.
And you're not going to be playing.
Yeah.
And you've never been away from home. So you probably stayed up all night because you're like, oh my gosh, I get to play PlayStation whenever I want.
Yeah, with all of these buddies, and all that piece. And then all of a sudden it's like, you get in that first meeting and you're like, wow, the expectations are really high here, and so you set a standard and you set a tone respectfully but forcefully about, hey, this is what we got to do to win, and I think, the kids that we're seeing now today, they do a great job of trying to adapt. We get 2.5 weeks before we play our first game, and usually when you're a great football team, you don't play a lot of freshmen because the guys that were freshmen are now seniors, and you just keep going forward. So. It's just been things. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah. So you got to Wingate with Coach Reich, correct?
Yes.
And you stayed here. Were you immediately the DC or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I came in 01 as the DC, and back then it was Chet Hennico, who has since kind of got out of coaching, but he ended up leaving here, going back home, and ended up at Bloomsburg, and eventually became a defensive coordinator. Mike Gatilius was my first D-line coach. Now he's a head coach at Catholic University. And, we, really didn't know each other, but, all great guys, all good people. And we just kind of got to become really good friends and did a good job of just working with the guys and teaching, and trying to establish a culture, of effort, attitude, and toughness, and we didn't necessarily talk about it like that back in the day, but that's what it was: effort, attitude, and toughness. And then, ended up, while I was here, got married to my wife. We've been married 21 years.
Had a whole bunch of kids.
And that's, yes. That was, so, I was just telling this story the other day. So we get here, and in 03, we have our first child. And then in 04, we have another child. So I'm like, okay, we weren't getting paid a lot back then. Yep. Still not getting paid a tremendous amount, but
it's not as glamorous as people think.
No, it's not. It's not. I'm not retiring anytime soon. And so we're at 2, and we're both from families of 3. I'm the oldest, she's the oldest, and I got two brothers, she's got 2 brothers, and so she wanted to have another one, and I'm like, are you crazy? No. Listen, I'm no. I have an opinion. I'm standing my ground. So then we had 2 more kids after that. So we ended up with 4 in 3 years. And and obviously it was a lot of challenges. My wife.
I can't imagine. Like I'm at one that's like, a year and a half right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know how anybody has more than one.
My wife is an absolute superstar. I don't remember them, and I think that's part of maybe God's plan a little bit is so that, you don't remember how bad some of the bads were, but you only remember the good times. Yeah. And, she, and if you've never been a part of a coaching family, obviously we spend a tremendous amount of time from August till whenever the season's over away from home.
Right.
And even, and one of the reasons I did stay at Division II as long as I did is because recruiting's a little bit different where you do get some time at home. But the challenges of the time frame with her with 4 kids, I mean, her mom came down and helped for a little bit. It was, I don't know how she did it. I would try to make it home as often and as fast as I could. And again, working for Joe Reich, that's another reason why a lot of guys have stayed here because it was, when you get a chance,
he's a family man.
Yes,
when he wants you to go with your family.
Yes, when you get a chance to sprint out the office and get home with your wife and 4 kids, you can go sprint home and do what you need to do and get your work done and come back and still be good with working at the program. So we at some point in time, we just started having conversations about should we try to come back closer to her house? You know, we're both from the same area. She's about an hour and a half south of Buffalo from where I was. And so I, Bobby Earhart, guy that I mentioned earlier, ended up knowing someone, and I ended up taking another job in New York. So I left in after the 07 season.
I was going to say 07 because 09 was my last season. So the last 2 years you weren't there. So 07.
Yeah, 07 we left, and so I was 08 at another university. Then I ended up getting out of coaching for a couple of years, got back into coaching, and ended up being a defense coordinator at another great little small school up in New York. And then the guy had took over for me as a defense coordinator, ended up becoming the head coach at Limestone. And so I was sitting at another university, being a DC, raising my kids, having a good time. We're still close to my mom. We're still close to her parents. We're having all the benefits of having people come over for Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that. And then Joe calls me up out of the nowhere in the middle of the winter and says, "Hey man, you ready to come back?" I said, "Yes, I'm ready." I said, "I've been waiting for this phone call." And I didn't even know he was going to call. It was just kind of one of those things where
if he calls, I'm in.
I'm in. We and my wife and I were just looking at it like, hey, we called it 5 years. It was 4 seasons. And we were just like, you know what? It'd be nice to go back. We loved the region. We loved it. We loved the weather. We started our family down there, so it felt like home. So when he gave me that phone call, I jumped on a plane, came back down here, and then I guess now the rest is history. Now in terms of how it worked
that's
out.
awesome, man. And I remember you leaving, and obviously it was tremendously difficult for the defense.
Yeah.
I just had punt team. I'm like, finally, I got some time to breathe, because Coach Reich took over punt team, and he was coaching me at the same time, and I was like, all right, at least I know this guy. He's not going to get on me that bad.
Yeah.
But when you came back, I think I came back over the summer or something to watch a practice, and I was like, hey, Coach Jordan's back. That's awesome. And, I would come in and I'd sit and watch some of your meetings, because I was coaching some high school football for fun. I was like, I got nothing better to do. Let's get back into football. And so I'd watch your meeting, because like you, I knew nothing about defense. I'm like, well, let me learn from someone that actually knows a little bit. And so I'd come in and watch, and, it's a really, really interesting thing to see how your players really just embrace the way you treat them. They're very, you're their guy, and they can tell, you can tell that there's just so much care and compassion, and they play hard for you.
Well, I think the thing that they really kind of, what helps them is they know that we are doing, Travis Knight is a tremendous defensive line coach. He played for me at the linebacker position, and then has switched over from being a linebacker coach to a defensive line coach, and he's producing All-Americans all over the place. And then, I've had a number of guys that have worked for me in the secondary. Right now, Nick Ulassin came on his first year. And, to be good at anything, obviously, it's always about the team that you have around you and the product or the material that you have. And it doesn't matter if you're making Oreo cookies or aluminum. Got to have a great team, got to have a good product, right? So all good football coaches are supported by 2 things: great players and great assistant coaches. And so I think when it comes to the guys, they know that the staff that they have working with them are tirelessly trying to find the absolute best and most efficient way to get them to be the best that they can be. And I think if any player, that's all they want from their coach, is they want somebody that is passionately going about trying to help them achieve what they want. And, and the guys know that, when we come together as a defensive staff, that we're going to stay up as long as we need to figure out what do we need to do to how to get a stop for you guys and to put you in a position to make plays. And then we're going to, build what we call FBI, football intelligence, and grow their knowledge of the game. And we're going to give them a bunch of information. And I think once you start to understand what all is happening, it fills your soul, because then you're at the right place.
Right.
That you're getting value out of why you decided to come to Wingate and play here.
Yeah. So, you've coached some really, really talented players.
Yes.
I never want to single out guys or anything. However, who are some standouts and some players that you can really think of?
Goodness. Well, obviously I'll start from from the big, first part to the, and going backwards. I got here in John Bowman was on the football team, and, John just finished, I think, like 15, 16 years in the CFL, and Hall of Famer in the CFL. Now he's coaching in the CFL, and that was kind of just an amazing thing because, John was a really great football. I mean, I think his senior year he had 17 sacks.
It was up there.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a sack machine, and but he never could gain any weight, and so he stops coaching and he kind of sits on the couch and lifts, and all of a sudden he turns into a 250-pound man later in life and becomes a CFL Hall of Famer. Didn't see that coming. But I was, that was tremendous to see. DeMarcus Dogan, who I think still holds the career tackle total here. He was a tremendous player. He was a guy that, I think benefited a lot from a change in the coaching staff in terms of just a different perspective. And, he grew as a leader and was very productive. Then you started getting into the guys that, and not to miss anybody.
Yeah, I mean, we're always going to miss somebody.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, So then you start jumping into, the guys that we started recruiting and getting that class, and you're talking about Donald Brown and David Jones and Kenwin Cummings. You got the Tyler Johnsons, the Travis Knights, the T. Overmans, the Hambricks. I mean, it's a lot of dudes.
It was just back to back
to
back.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a great job by the staff of and back in those days, we were not a destination place.
Right.
We were going out and beating the bushes to find guys that were willing to come here and that had the right attitude and the mentality, and that was one of the big things, was just finding the guys that were going to fight.
Right.
That were just, listen, let's not care about first of all, let's just fight.
Yeah.
Let's have some
just
grit.
need effort.
Just need grit and effort. And then when that started happening, obviously recruiting got a little bit easier because
when you win, it's a little easier.
Like everybody pays attention to you. And then then when I got back, there was Nick Napatano. I'm probably butchering that name. He always had trouble with that. And then, we had Ray Edwards, and we started having this really huge run with defensive ends that have been, Cardell Rollins, and then we've had DJ Horn, and now we got Marquise Fleming, and then we got Jaquan Edwards, and we got Trey Morrison, and we got we start going down my safeties list.
DNU right now.
Yeah, and it's a bit funny too because the playoff run last year, one of the opposing coaches, when they finally got to take a look at our team, they're like, you guys aren't anywhere as big as I thought you were going to be, and it's like, no, it's not exactly about the number and the height and the size. It's about the size of the fight and the dog.
Yeah.
And
we've always been a little undersized.
Yeah. People are like, I've heard the legend of Wingate's defense is like, hey, when you see them, they're going to do this. And I expected the D-line to be 6'4", 300 pounds, and the D-ends to be 6'2" and 375, and and it's all this stuff. And we got guys out there that people were like, oh, that I didn't think that would, but you know what? You don't want to mess with that guy,
right?
Because he will bite your face off, and you get out there and they're like, wow, I cannot believe it. And then when they play us, the comment always is these guys play as hard as any team we have ever seen ever, and we won't quit. It doesn't matter. One of the things I've said to every unit that we've had is I said, I don't care what the circumstance is. One of the worst things that can happen for a defense is that they start looking at the scoreboard and what's happening on the other side of the field. That's not what your job is. Your job is to get stops. That's it. In a vacuum, it doesn't matter. Do your job. This is what you're supposed to do. And I also say to them, look, the game is about scoring points. When articles are written, and obviously I'm becoming a head coach now, so I got to balance this. But we're talking about the yesteryear stuff. Yeah. Is when articles are written, they're written about who scored, who made points, who did this. So defensively, if the game is 31-28, nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody cares. But if you play a game and it's a tight football game and it's 10-7, you get a chance to be a legend, to do something impossible, to do the difficult,
If you can keep someone's name out of the paper.
Exactly. 0 claps for their mother. That's what the joke is.
That's good.
And I got that from somebody else. But, it's the thing is like, you're playing on the other side of the ball. They have the pencil last. They know what the play is. And so we had to try to build that mentality of like, don't worry about the circumstance. Worry about what you can do, and I think that's going to be the same thing. And you could really say that the same thing for offenses. I mean, there's plenty of times where, offenses have to deal with, well, the defense ain't stopping anybody. We got to go out there and try to score again ourselves. And so,
Right.
I think from a team standpoint, that's what Joe Reich has preached, and I'm going to continue to preach that. It was just when in the previous role, that was what my focus was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Big change though.
Yeah.
We've known what to expect from Coach Reich.
Yeah.
We're probably going to expect a lot of the same. You're going to bring in some new stuff that is near and dear to your heart. So, people that are coming up to this season to watch a game, what can they expect from, the new Wingate football?
Well, and I think that's, I've been asked that a lot of times, and I think that's a great question. And I think a lot of people expect when there's leadership change that there's going to be some kind of big wholesale change. And that's why I'm continuing to say the same thing to everybody. It's a new beginning, but a continuation. When I got the job and I did one of my very first interviews, somebody asked me the same question. I said, a lot of the things that may change, you won't notice. We have two different completely personalities. So there'll be team meetings and addressing issues that my tone and demeanor will be different, but to get the product and the end result will be the same and what I'm looking for. I've been here 23 years. That trust, respect, the commitment to excellence, the attitude and toughness, that was a collaborative thing that we all bought into and we talked about. So those are things that are near and dear to my heart. Will we have some changes, in terms of little things that we do from a schematic standpoint that I'm not divulging? Yeah, we'll have some things in there. It'll be we'll have some things that we're going to focus on. Maybe
you heard it here first. We're going back to split back here.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, right. No, will there be some areas where I think, I want to focus on these particular things here and there? Yeah, but I mean, I don't think they're going to be things that you would perceptibly see in terms of like, are we all of a sudden going to just only run the ball? No. Or all of a sudden we're going to turn into a split back beer team? No. Now we may have had a different flavor last year in terms of certain situations and being in this. Maybe we might not be there again. I'm not going to divulge those things.
Right.
I think that's one of those things that between me and the staff, we got to talk about where we at with the players that we have now, because every team's different. What you did last year, the schemes that you ran last year, that was based on what you had last year. This year, you got graduations, you got guys going in the portal. So now you got to look at it again, like, okay, what is going to be best for this team? We haven't barely been a big man-free team, in previous years. If we end up this year having, a certain set of defensive backs and that's their skill, you've never seen us be a man-free team. Now we might be a more man-free team, and I think that's the same thing on offense. We have some skilled kids that showed out, and hey, we beat Lenore Ryan this year. Nobody else has so far, and we were throwing the ball effectively in that game. And we have some good backs. We've run outside zone, inside zone. So we got to find out, with the group that we have this year, what are they really good at? Yeah,
it's, a lot of people think that it's like, oh, this is our system. Like, yes, there is a system, but you can't put a square peg into a round hole.
Right.
Luckily we can recruit, and we're trying to recruit people for the scheme that we like to run.
Yeah. But yeah, like you look at it, from this standpoint, we're not built recruiting wise defensively to be a 3-4 system. We're not that position at defensive end that, our ends are 6'4", 275. We're more sleek. We're more 6'2", 240, athletic. I mean, that's what we like. So you're never going to see us wholesale change that unless there's a reason to.
Right.
Talent-wise, and the same thing offensively. We're a spread football team. We've recruited that way. We got guys that fit that system. We're not going out and going to be, going to the air raid, 75 passes a time, passes a game. We want to run the football. We want to be able to control the clock. We want to be able to get to the fourth quarter and dominate the fourth quarter physically. But at the same time, other teams have scholarships too, and some of their strengths might be what our weakness is, and so then you have to be able to attack in a different way. And that's one of the things I believe in is your system has to be such that everybody's recruiting, everybody's has scholarships, everybody's got players that make all conference and all American. And sometimes that matchup may be that you need to attack them in a different way. And you just can't say, well, because, everybody's doing this, we're going to run these same plays and go up against a brick wall.
Yeah.
Or like, all of a sudden, defensively, like, oh, we're going to go out and we're going to, play this against these guys. And it's like, well, they're really good at this. Yeah. That's not the best way to do this.
Right. So kind of taking this thing off, I'm going to leave everyone with one of my favorite Coach Jordan stories that it might not be true. This might be a legend. This could be an urban legend.
Hold on.
So, if you don't do right, generally you have, it's not a punishment, but you've got extracurricular work you might need to do.
Sure.
And so I believe somebody either skipped a meeting, or I think they missed our punt meeting, to be honest. And, because they were a starter, high-end starter, and they said, I don't need to go to this punt meeting. And you didn't like that. And so you asked them to come join for morning runs. And like I said, this might be a myth, but you had them run the campus and just jog the campus, and you drove in your car behind them just to make sure that they were jogging. And this was early morning, cold, and you just had your window down, yelling out the window, keep going.
I think that story has morphed a couple of scenarios
so
together.
I assumed based on who it was.
There was an incident where someone slept through a meeting, and instead of giving them a ride, I made them run to practice. And I gently followed behind them and motivated them to get to practice on time.
That makes sense. The story that we get told, it gets a little, animated from said person.
It's like one of those things. Like the longer it goes, all of a sudden I might have been in a semi truck with with an AK-47 or something like that. Making it with grenades and all that other stuff. But no, it was. There's been several times. I mean, it happens a bit. And then one of the things is that you just want to make sure to get to practice,
The thing is, I think they were an All-American. I think they were good.
Yeah, I think they were pretty good, too. And I just wanted to make sure they got there. So I said, you know what? Everybody else was already running and had gotten warmed up. So I'm not going to give you an easy out. You need to catch up in the running with your teammates. So you're going to run from Helms all the way down to the football stadium.
I think that's pretty good. I think they learned, too. I don't think they missed any more stuff.
We did not have any more missed after that. We did not have any more missed.
Well, Coach, like I said, I'm super excited to see what you do with the team this year. I think everybody is. I don't think there's a better coach that could have been in this position. Anything
Appreciate
that you do and need from the Wingate Bulldog community, I'm sure that you have as much support as you possibly can get.
I couldn't be in a better place. For my first opportunity to lead a program and have the athletic director be somebody that I can go to for mentorship and guidance, and the Wingate community, which has always been great to all of us, and the coaching staff, the players. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better situation. So I'm truly blessed and honored.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we appreciate you listening to the OneDog podcast, and we will see you again next week.
Take care, everyone.